All right, let us begin. We are still in the third chapter toward the end of Hilchos Talmud Torah. We've been talking for a couple of days already in this third chapter. Remember, this is the Agadic chapter about all the beautiful sayings there are that the Rambam collects together from Shas about the mitzvah of learning Torah. We are number 12. Halacha Yud Beis. Ein divrei Torah miskaimen b'misha marpa atzmo alehen. Okay, Rambam continues on this theme where he says that Torah will only stick with someone who exerts an effort. Okay, meaning the Torah is koneh to someone, is acquired by someone who he gives it in a negative. He says it's not acquired by someone who doesn't really try. The word marpe comes from the word like soft. Someone who's very like lackadaisical, right? Doesn't isn't very active about it. Nor is it acquired by someone who just studies. He's got to be on a nice couch with his legs spread out, right? Like he's reading the newspaper. He's got his food and right. He's got his chips and guacamole and his soft drinks around him. That's not what Torah is about. It's not a. It's not a like reading a Danielle Steele novel. It's way more than that. How so? Ela b'misha meimis atzmo aleihen. Rambam says you literally have to kill yourself for it. You have to strive and strive until you. The word is meimis atzmo. Literally means to kill yourself. Mitzar gufo tamid, and you're, in pain. And you're up all night. Ulafapav tenuma. Right? You don't give your eyes any rest. Now, again, the point is not that you should be painful. It shouldn't be, not that it should be painful, right? Because we know that it has to be pleasurable for you, and it shouldn't be, it shouldn't be pain. But Rambam's trying to, I think, this is a Gemara. Actually, he's going to quote this Gemara now, so let's see it together. Amu Chachamim Derech Remez. He quotes a Gemara. This is from Brachos and a couple of other places. So Torah Adam Kiyamus Ba'ohel. Ein HaTorah Miskayemes El B'mi Shememes Atzmo Ba'ohel HaChachamim. You have to kill yourself in order to, in order to acquire Torah, right? Someone who gives up his life in the proverbial halls of the Beis Medrash, right? That's what the Rambam is trying to say. Okay, v'chen amar Shlomo b'chachmaso, hisrapisa biyom tzara tzar kochecha. Pasuk in Mishlei that says, if you faint, okay, in the day of adversity, your strength is small. Okay. Va'od amar af chachma amdali, right? Wisdom stood for me. It remained with me. Chachma shalamadati ba'af hi amdali, right? The wisdom that I learned, ba'af, af means afu b'chema, right? The Torah that I learned while anger, that has remained with me. It's a certain personality that you have to, as we call, tough it out. And the Torah weakens us, right? We learned that there's actually a Gemara in Bava Metzia, right? The story of Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish, right? When Rav Yochanan was observed by Reish Lakish jumped in. He thought it was a woman. Long story. That's when Reish Lakish saw the light, and when he came out, he couldn't get out of the water because he was very, very weak. So a lot of people point out that is one of that Torah physically drains you, right? When you get into it, right? Sometimes you see that it's just very draining. So that's also actually what we're going to say now. Amru Chachamim Bris Krusa Shekol Hayageh B'Torasu Beis Hamidrash Lo B'Meheruhu Mishakeach. Right? If you become weak, like I just mentioned the story, right? Then the Torah will not quickly be forgotten. It's almost like it absorbs into your system and it weakens you. And someone who toils in his Talmud, bitzina, right? Tzina means in private, right? Tznius, machkim. He will become smarter. The pasuk says, to those people who are tzanua, chachma will come. V'chol hamashmiya kolo b'shas talmudo, talmudo miskayim biyado. Anyone who is loud, meaning he can hear his own voice when he's learning, then his Torah will stay with him. Someone who reads silently, that's something that's not going to remain with you. That's why you hear a lot of times people in the classic base measure settings, you see people learning by themselves. They're talking the Gemara outside, right? They're saying it to themselves, because when you speak, you absorb it better than someone who just looks at it and doesn't verbalize. Okay, a lot of famous statements. So we're going to conclude the chapter. I think this is the last halacha in the chapter. Yud Gimel. We're going to talk about day versus night. Afal pisha mitzvah limud b'yom uba layla, right? Days and hours are all equal when it comes to Talmud Torah. Ein adam lamed rov hachmaso el b'layla. It's preferred, the Gemara talks about in a few places, I think in the beginning Chagiga was one of the places. It says that Divrei Torah are best learned at night, or the way the Rambam puts it, he says that rove, most of the wisdom you acquire is done at night for whatever reason. So therefore, if you have an option to have a Seder in the day or in the night, right? This is what they call night Seder, everyone's favorite in yeshiva, right? So you pick your favorite topic you want to learn at night, because there's something about the night that you acquire more. Okay, so and the Rambam says you should be careful not to spend your nights watching basketball games. Don't waste your time with eating and this and that. The night is put away for Torah. The rina, right? The song of Torah is best at night. Shenemar kumi roni balayla. Pasuk in Eicha v'chol osek b'Torah balayla. If you learn Torah at night, I think he quotes this from a Gemara also, word for word. Chut shel chesed nimshach alav b'yom. There's a strand of chesed that is following you during the next day. Shenemar yomam yitzava Hashem chasto u'balayla shira imi tefillah la'el chayai. Pasuk in Tehillim. V'chol bayis she'ein nishmo'in bo divrei Torah balayla eish ochlaso. Also another Gemara, that if Torah isn't heard in your house at night, it will be burnt down. Whoa. Shenemar kol choshech tamun litzpunav ta'achlehu eish lo nupach. Pasuk in Eov that says that the darkness is hidden away from his treasures, and a fire that is unnecessary will consume him. Kidvar Hashem baza. Aha. The pasuk says Kidvar Hashem baza. That's a pasuk in Shlach. Someone who went against God's word. This is someone who's not mashkiach, who's not really concerned at all about divrei Torah. V'chen kol she'efshar lo lafik b'Torah ve'en osek. Someone who has the ability, and doesn't. O shakar v'shanu perish lahavle olam v'hiniach talmudo, or someone who, he learns once, he learns twice, he tries, he studied, and then he left the fold. Uh-oh. Right? He went on to be something else. V'hiniach talmudo, he forgot about his Gemara. Harei ze b'chlal boza dvar Hashem. That is someone who scorns God. Whoa. Okay. Almost done with the perek. Amru chachamim kol ha'mevatel es haTorah ma'osher sofa levatlo ma'oni. Someone who's not interested in learning Torah because he's an usher, right? Remember the Rambam mentioned this Gemara, quotes from Neseches Yuma Lamed Vav, where it talks about Rabbi Elazar ben Charsum. I think he was the richest person, and still he never left the Torah. He could have had all the excuses, but still. So here the Rambam reminds us of that story, and he says that if you use it as an excuse and you're mevatel Torah when you are rich, sofa levatlo ma'oni, you will end up being mevatel Torah also when you don't have any money. And the converse is v'chol ha'makayim es haTorah ma'oni, sofa l'kayim ma'osher. And if you put the time and take the time, even if you have no money, right? When we think about those kind of stories, we think of the story in Nedarim, if you remember, Daf Nun, I believe, of Rabbi Akiva, right? He had nothing. He was learning Torah, and he was sitting in hay in his house, if you remember that, right? So that's the story of Rabbi Akiva. So we have all these stories, and if you're Makayim it when you're poor, you will be Makayim it when you are rich. So for L'kayim Osher. The Rambam ends off by saying that the source for this is the very, very infamous pasuk in Kisavo, where it talks about the reason why all these bad things are happening to us, right, in the Tochacha, because you weren't serving God besimcha ubetov levav merov kol, right? Because even though you had a lot of things, right, you still weren't satisfied enough, and therefore you didn't learn Torah. Okay? So even though you had it, but you didn't do it. So therefore, if you continue the Tochacha, the next pasuk, it says, Vevarata es oivecha, right? And you'll end up serving your enemies. It's a really, really bad Tochacha, really bad curse. V'omer lamano noscha, right? And then the pasuk in Akeb says, right, inui, right? This is one of the sources of inui, of afflicting yourself, right? It says that you are going to be suffering. Laman onoscha lanasascha ladas. Then it says lahitivcha b'acharitecha. Then it says eventually you will prosper. So these are two themes, right? Where you go from up to down by those two psukim in Kisavo, and then in Akev you go from down to up. You were suffering, but in the ended up you prospered in the end. So that's a proof for what the Rambam was saying before about how you shouldn't have any excuse that you can't learn when you're rich, because if you make that excuse, then you'll lose all your money and you still won't have time to study. All right, so that's the end of the perek. We'll stop. Actually, we could do another one. We could start the fourth chapter. This chapter deals with, actually, we will stop here because it's a whole new sugya. It's going to talk about more of like what we had in chapter 2, where we spoke about the settings of the classroom and the teachers and how exactly do you teach, right? What was the classroom setup? How were they sitting, right? What rules did the teachers have to have, and what rules